So thank you everyone for coming to the webinar today. My name is Brandon Grant. I'm the Sales and Marketing Director here at QuoteWerks. And today we're just going to be doing kind of an introduction and overview of QuoteWerks Web. Obviously with a lot of the circumstances, for a lot of you, things have changed where QuoteWerks Web might be something that you want to add to your company, or you might just been interested in adding it before. So we'll kind of walk through a demonstration of it, what it looks like, how it works, and kind of how you can add it to your installation. Couple things to keep in note. If you do have questions kind of as we're going through things, definitely make sure you are posting the questions in the questions box in the GoToWebinar. I'll circle back at the end of the webinar and answer those questions kind of at the end of it, so when we have time to go through those. Additionally, if you do have any additional questions after the webinar that aren't answered then, just let us know. Feel free to give us a call or send us an email. We'll be happy to answer anything that you or any questions you have regarding QuoteWerks Web or even just QuoteWerks in general. Okay, so let's get started. So first thing, QuoteWerks Web, kind of what is it? QuoteWerks Web is an add-on to QuoteWerks Desktop. And what that basically means is that you don't need to repurchase QuoteWerks to add QuoteWerks Web. You simply need to add the subscription to your existing licensing. Does require a couple things. You do have to be on the corporate edition, and you do have to have valid maintenance. QuoteWerks Web is a fairly new product, so we're constantly pushing out updates to it. So you need to be on the latest version of QuoteWerks in order to stay compatible and just make sure everything works properly. A couple of things to mention about QuoteWerks Web is it actually uses your existing licensing features. So if you have Quote Valet, if you have Etilize in real time, you're going to be able to continue to use that functionality in QuoteWerks Web. You don't have to purchase anything additional for that. QuoteWerks Web essentially just kind of bolts on to QuoteWerks Desktop and allows you to access the majority of the features that are available in QuoteWerks Desktop through your web browser. This will give you access to all of your additional documents, your old documents, any new documents you're creating, obviously, and then also supports CRM integrations for like ConnectWise, AutoTask, Salesforce, MS CRM Dynamics, those types of things. Most common question is how much is it? It is $10 per user per month, or you can purchase the annual subscription. It's $110 per user per year. The hosting options are going to include, you can use our hosting service. You can use a third party like Amazon or like Azure, or you can host it yourself. So you have a kind of variety of options how you want to set it up. So if you already have your own SQL server in-house, if you already have QuoteWerks on a SQL server, you can add QuoteWerks Web pretty easily to your installation with minimal setup. So that's one of the nice things about the setup of it. We kind of talked about this, but we do have the full integration with AutoTask, ConnectWise, MS CRM Dynamics, Salesforce, and Zoho. So if you are using any of those CRM integrations, you'll have access to continue to use the integrations. And the integrations are the exact same in QuoteWerks Web as they are in QuoteWerks Desktop. So you have all the same exact integrations, so you shouldn't see a change or any difference in how those integrations work. For QuoteWerks Web, just kind of the overview of the product itself, it's going to allow you to create, edit, deliver documents. So this means you're going to be able to do essentially everything that you currently do in QuoteWerks Desktop. Really the biggest difference is that you're not going to have access to the administrative features. So if you need to edit a layout, if you need to change a user's security settings, you would still do that in QuoteWerks Desktop. But as far as creating, preparing, delivering quotes, adding section headers to those documents, using your layouts, pulling items from your product databases, all that information is going to be available for you in QuoteWerks Web. And like I said, really just the only thing that QuoteWerks Web doesn't have is the administrative features. That's still done in QuoteWerks Desktop. But for most of you, you probably don't need to be changing security settings or editing layouts on a regular basis anyway. So you'll be able to really just use what QuoteWerks Web is designed for, which is just creating the quotes and kind of moving things forward from there. If you do have additional questions about QuoteWerks Web, we do have a dedicated web page available, so you can view the videos there. We have all the CRMs that we integrate with QuoteWerks Web. They all have their own dedicated page, so if you want to see exactly how it looks like with your CRM, you can check that out on the website. And then we also have the help file instructions, obviously, with a lot more information about kind of QuoteWerks Web setup and things like that, which we'll kind of touch on today as well. As always, if you have questions, definitely make sure you reach out to us. We're happy to answer any questions via email or phone. Make sure you're following us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, LinkedIn, all those for updates about new features that are available, webinars that we're doing, events that will be in the future, hopefully, those types of things. So, okay, so let's go ahead and move over to QuoteWerks Web. I'm just going to flip screens here. All right, so what you see here is actually right after you log into QuoteWerks Web. This is kind of like the home screen in QuoteWerks Web. And you log into QuoteWerks Web using your QuoteWerks username and password. So the same way you log into QuoteWerks with your username and password, same way you log into QuoteWerks Web. For those of you that have Quote Valet, it's going to be very similar where you put in the tenant account number and also the username and password. So it's all going to be tied together. So you have that universal login. So on the left-hand side, you have what we call the navigation panel. This is going to be where you're going to work inside of QuoteWerks Web. So the workbook, once you have a document open, this will have your tabs that you're used to. Your documents is where you can search for documents that you want to pull into QuoteWerks. And like I said, this gives you access to your QuoteWerks desktop database. So as you are searching for documents, if the document has been created in QuoteWerks Web or in QuoteWerks Desktop, you'll be able to find the document here. There's no syncing necessary for that. So once you set up QuoteWerks Web the first time, you have to do an initial sync. After that, you shouldn't have to do it unless you make changes to like a layout or something like that on the administrative side. But as far as like your documents go, we're pulling directly from that database. So if someone's working in QuoteWerks Desktop and they create a new document in QuoteWerks Desktop, that would be available directly in QuoteWerks Web. You'd be able to pull and open that document immediately if they're not in it, and vice versa. If you created a document in QuoteWerks Web and then you wanted someone in the office to review it and they logged into QuoteWerks Desktop, they could review that document again as long as you're not in it immediately. So there's no syncing or lag or anything like that. So it'll work pretty seamlessly there. Products, this is where your products and services are going to be stored just like in QuoteWerks Desktop, and we'll go through that. Contacts, Quote Valet Insights. So if you're logged into Quote Valet, you can pull that information, and then your Quote Valet dashboard, you'll have access to that from QuoteWerks Web as well. Okay, so let's click back to the quote workbook, and you have the option to start with a new quote, or you can load from a template. You can also, like I said, click on the open, and this will show you your previously, I think it's your last 10 documents that you worked on, or if you click on open, it'll just bring you to the documents shortcut here. So we're going to go back to our workbook, and we're just going to start with a new blank document. So we'll choose new quote, and we're just going to give our quote a name. So for ours, we'll just call this our webinar document, and then click create. And that'll start our process in QuoteWerks Web. And then once you get in there, once you have an open document in QuoteWerks Web, you'll see everything will look pretty familiar to you. So we'll have our typical tabs. We have some of the same icons. The menu's been cut down a little bit just to make things a little more streamlined, but the process is going to be really similar. So if you're integrating with one of the CRMs, you're still going to go to your sold to, ship to tab to pull in a contact. So let's go ahead and click on that. You also have the option of just going to the contacts menu. It's a little bit quicker, a little more of a shortcut where you can click on contacts and then search for a company. Select your contacts and then pull them in. As you complete tasks in QuoteWerks Web, you'll see little confirmation notices in the bottom right corner will open up, letting you know that, hey, you actually did pull that contact. So if you weren't sure if the click went through or anything like that, you'll see those little confirmation messages as things happen. If we go back to our workbook here and go back to the sold to, ship to tab, you'll see our contact has been pulled in here, and you can pull the contact from here as well. So it's easy enough to kind of navigate between the two. And then from there, the process is going to be very similar. There's just a little bit of feature differences with some of these things. So if we right click in here and we wanted to insert a section header, we do have that option. So let's go ahead and put one in there. So we'll do one for products. And we'll do another one for services. We'll have our 2 section headers in there. So you'll see once we add some items in there, we'll have a little bit different options for kind of editing the items. So let's go to our products here. So this will probably be the first big change, especially for those of you that are using Etilize, is that typically what you see on the left-hand side is a list of all your databases, which we have here. But if you're using Etilize, it's actually in its own kind of like tab section. So we're going to click on Etilize here, and then you'll begin your Etilize search. And for the most part, this is going to look pretty similar to what you're used to. There we go. And then this will return back our results. And then you can start using the filtering functionality. So you'll have your categories, the features and attributes, all that information. So the same kind of things you have in QuoteWerks Desktop when you're searching in Etilize. This will probably be the biggest difference is this interface is just a little bit different than what you would be used to in the desktop version. So for instance, if we select this item here, that'll load the pricing information from the distributors. So we'll see D&H, Cinex, Ingram Micro, and Tech Data. And then if you hover over the availability, it'll actually give you that vendor breakout, so that warehouse breakdown between the different vendors. And when you want to select an item, so if we look at, we'll do Tech Data since they have 30 in stock. We'll choose Select Add, and you'll get a confirmation that it was added to the document. You'll also have access to the accessory items. So if we wanted to view, like in this case, cables, we could add these to the document as well. So we'll just do a quick add here. And the quick add will basically allow you to add the item directly to the document without getting the pricing and availability. I'm going to go ahead and just select our availability here, just to make sure we source one from a vendor that has it in stock. And then if you have anything else that you want to go through, you can do that. And then you can essentially minimize that window and go through it again. You'll also see there's a couple new tabs or new options for the different items. Workspace is this workspace tab. So if you added, let's say, multiple items to your workspace, you'll see as you select those, they appear in the workspace tab. So the workspace tab is a kind of like a temporary holding position for those items. So if you know you're going to be doing multiple quotes, especially that are selling a lot of the same or similar items, you can save items on the workspace tab. That way you're not having to do a search and find those items each time. So it's just kind of like a little shortcut there. You'll also see the items have the ability to be added to your favorites. So the difference between the favorites and the workspaces is the favorites would be more permanent. This is something where you add an item and it's going to show up there every time you log in, log out. For the workspace, this is only going to be in here in your session. So if you log out of QuoteWerks Web, then your workspace is automatically cleared of these items. So like I said, it's just going to be a temporary holding place for these items, kind of built for creating multiple quotes with the same set of items on a regular basis or over and over again. We'll go back to the search tab here. You'll also see we have the compare tab, and the compare tab works just like that comparison window in QuoteWerks Desktop, where you can compare those multiple items at once. It's just done on a tab instead of a separate window. So in QuoteWerks Desktop, we actually open up a separate window to view this. In QuoteWerks Web, we just keep it on a tab just so it's a little easier to manage in this window. And it works the same way. You can get your pricing availability, highlight the product differences, and you can see all the information that's available there. So, okay. So Etilize, like I said, it's working pretty similar to QuoteWerks Desktop, with just the interface just a little different, but the functionality is going to be the same. Product databases, so this would be where you're searching for your items, where you have items set up in your own product sources. For those of you using Autotask, ConnectWise, or Salesforce, we will show your price list here. So if you're connected with those CRM or PSA systems and you're using them to manage your items, we'll be able to pull them from QuoteWerks Web here. So they'll show up in your price list just like they do in QuoteWerks Desktop. For those of you that aren't, if you have your price list set up in QuoteWerks, those will be available here. And when you select one of the databases, you'll have the option to search by like the description, part numbers, manufacturer part number, vendor part numbers, by the manufacturer, if you have internal part numbers, those types of things. If you want to select multiple items, we can do that. And then we can add them to the document. And then you have the option with the Add Item Assistant, so that way you can check price history for these items. So if you've sold it before, you'll actually be able to view that information. So like I said, a lot of the same functionality is going to be available to you here as it is in QuoteWerks Desktop. And we're just going to add these other items under services just so we have something here. And actually, services. And so, and as you can see, as I'm completing tasks in QuoteWerks Web, you'll get those little confirmation messages that the items were added into the workbook. So at any point, if you want to switch back to the workbook, you can simply click on the workbook icon, and that'll bring you over here. I do have this minimized. If you click on this icon here, that'll actually bring out the menu, so it's a little larger. I like the icons. It gives you a little more real estate, and it's a little easier to view, in my opinion. So I like working in this way better. So once you have the items on the document, we do support drag and drop. So if you want to maneuver items around the document, it's very, very easy to do so. So we can get our products under the right section. If you want to delete a line item, we can delete a line item from the quote to smooth things over. The right-click menu has most of the options available for you. So we have all the line attributes. So if you click and right-click a line attribute, you can do that. So if you want to mark an item as optional, you'll have that. And then you'll see you'll have the option to set it as is selected, use the exclusive groups. If you want to set it if it's recurring, you'll have the option to set it as recurring as well, and use all those features there. So all that functionality is in there. Same thing with right-clicking. You'll see you have like access to comments, subtotals, running subtotals, discount lines, all those things, converting items to group, those types of things. Where some of the other features that would be available that's not in QuoteWerks Desktop is we actually have this toggle description panel button here. So when you highlight an item, if you click on the toggle description panel, it'll bring up the description here. So you can make changes to it. So if I just wanted to maybe just shorten this description and then go to the next one, you can actually go through pretty quickly and make changes to your items. So it's just another way to, instead of having to go into the description itself to make the changes. I know a lot of you have been using QuoteWerks for a long time, so you want to make sure that you can still go in here. So if you toggle that off, you still can double click in that description panel, and that'll open it up. So if you want to make changes to it and copy and paste text in there, you can still do that. So we try to keep a lot of the functionality the same so that you're not having to relearn a completely new system. You're going to be able to continue to take advantage of that functionality. Okay. Sale info tab, a lot of this will be the same as well, and this is also going to use your settings from QuoteWerks Desktop. So it'll have basically your typical expiration date that you have set, the sales rep and prepared by field set, the tax rate defaults, your contract dates, those things, anything that you have by default set. Same thing with your payment options. If you're using multiple payment options, we'll use the default settings, but you do have the option to add and edit and remove ones that you're not using. And same thing with the leasing options as well. So if you're using that, you have that available also. Over on the Notes tab, same thing. You have access to all your Notes tabs, so your introduction and closing notes, purchasing internal and the dynamic notes, as well as the custom fields as well. So we added a ton of new custom fields in the last release of QuoteWerks. Especially these custom memo fields are new as well, so you'll have access to those. So if you're setting default in any of those fields, you don't have to worry. All that's going to carry over into QuoteWerks as well. And you'll have access to the Quote Valet tab once you actually upload the document to Quote Valet here. All right, so let's go ahead and save our document. So on the save, obviously we're just going to save our document in QuoteWerks. This is also where if you are integrated with Autotask, ConnectWise, Salesforce, MS CRM Dynamics, or Zoho, you'll actually be able to integrate with those systems at that point. So this will let you create that opportunity, create those follow-ups, make sure that you're following through with everything that you need to there. So let's go ahead and click OK. Save our document. And then let's go to our deliver window. So the deliver window, again, just something that's going to change a little bit, but this is going to load all of your existing cover pages, layouts, literature documentation, spec sheets, everything you have set in your system. So you'll have access to that. So you're not having to recreate any of that information. You're not having to start from scratch or figure out how it's going to look. You'll be able to keep everything that you've already done. So for example, I already have my cover page set for my Word document, and it's set as my default. So it's already automatically selected for me, but I could click on the drop down and choose from one of my other cover pages that I wanted to use, and I could change it if I'd like. Same thing on the layout tab, you'll have access to your layout files, and then if you wanted to include an additional one, so if we wanted to do like that solution summary page, we could include that as well. Same thing for your literature documentation. If you have your literature, if you're using literature in QuoteWerks, we'll include that as well. So you're not, again, you're not having to recreate any of this information. And then once you have all that information here, we can preview it. Now this is probably the kind of biggest change, is that for a lot of you, when you use QuoteWerks Web for the first time, you'll actually see the pop-up is going to be blocked. So you just want to make sure that you allow that in order to view the PDF. So it's a pretty common thing when you first start using QuoteWerks Web. So if you're using it and you're trying to view your PDF, just especially if you're using Chrome, up at the top you'll see a little notification that it was blocked. So, and again, so you can see here, everything looks good. Have our licensing information, solution summary page, support agreement, and then we'll go ahead and get ready to send this via Quote Valet. And you'll see that, actually, let me back up. When we choose upload to Quote Valet, if you've set up approvals, those pull over as well. So you don't have to worry about the reps not having access to request approval or anything like that. It'll still be there so that they can request that approval. Choose our Quote Valet document, and then we'll preview it on our web page. So that'll open it up for us. So we can see our page, see our payment options, acceptance, uploads area, all that information's in there. And then once you're ready to send it, you can send it directly through QuoteWerks Web again. And any of those, if you're using like the email templates in QuoteWerks, we're going to set those templates. We're going to use your default. Your templates will be available to you. So if you have set up multiple email templates, you'll have access to those. The defaults you've set for like CC and BCC, those will be set as well. So we're going to use all those settings, all that information. The email window obviously is going to look just a little bit different from what you're used to, but you'll be able to make changes. So if you want to adjust it, maybe fix a spelling mistake, you'll be able to do that. If you want to attach additional documentation to send the customer, you can do that. And this will send using your information. The one difference with this is that when you add QuoteWerks Web credentials in QuoteWerks Desktop, you'll need to adjust some settings. So I'll show you how to do that here in just a few minutes where that's set up. It's very, very easy to do, but once you do that, simply hit send, and that'll send the document out to your customer. And then we can close out of here. And then as they interact with the document, you'll have access to that Quote Valet information. So you'll be able to see how they interact with the document. You can view the sales rep facing page from here, view the customer page, re-email the notification. If you've uploaded it for peer review or manager approval, you have options for those, as well as the payment by proxy and all that functionality. So you'll have access to all of that here. So we have our document, our FLAQ 2598. When you're ready, or if the customer signs off on it, it's going to work the exact same way. So the customer signs off on it, document goes through approval process, we convert it to an order, and then QuoteWerks will actually update that document as an order now. If you're using Autotask or ConnectWise or Salesforce or Zoho, and you had QuoteWerks create the opportunity or the deal, we would update it at that point with the information, anything that might have changed, and let you schedule calls and things of that nature. So that's how that'll be handled. So like I said, the process for you guys should be pretty similar to what you're doing now. You really shouldn't have to change too much if you're going this route, if you're going to start implementing QuoteWerks Web. So a couple things just to be aware of on the QuoteWerks side of things. Let me scoot over to QuoteWerks here. Give me a second while I get this changed over. Okay. So we talked about in QuoteWerks the email. So the email, you will want to make sure you just put in your email credentials here. So what will happen is when you have QuoteWerks Web, you'll actually go to Tools, My Preferences, and then QuoteWerks Web, and actually just add in, and you can use the same email credentials here. There's actually a copy button where you can copy over your email settings if they're the same. If you need to put in something different, you can, but that'll allow you to send or copy over the same information here. So that's easy enough. And then for a lot of companies, they worry about getting QuoteWerks Web up and running. It's actually really, really simple. Basically what happens is when you have your QuoteWerks Web updated, you'll just go to QuoteWerks Web Setup, and then this will load your settings. And then there's basically you'll check your subscription status, make sure you're logged in, and then you basically just drop in some settings from the SQL Server, whether it's your own personal one, whether it's ours, and then you run a sync. And when you run a sync, you basically will just choose sync up, and you can choose when to do a sync. So if you've already done it once, maybe just do it from like a month ago or something like that, if you updated like a new layout or anything. But really, the only time you'll have to do this, the sync, is the first time when you set up QuoteWerks Web, so the initial installation, and then the next time would be if you make any administrative changes that you want to push up to QuoteWerks Web. But other than that, you don't actually have to run a sync. That's really nice. Everything else will be shared in real time. So if we go to our open window here, and we view our documents that we've sent, let's just go to doc date today. So here's our quote that we created and the order. So it was readily available for us in QuoteWerks Desktop, like I said, without having to run a sync or anything like that. So QuoteWerks Desktop and QuoteWerks Web are reading from the same documents database. So as you're working on one or the other, you'll be able to see that information. All right, so let's go ahead and switch back here. So the Quote Valet dashboard, if you're using Quote Valet, you'll have access to the Quote Valet dashboard just like you would in QuoteWerks. So you can actually see when a customer has accepted a quote, if they viewed it, if they changed any options, changed selections, posted comments, anything like that, you'll have that access. And it is interactive. So once you interact with one of these notifications, if you need to remove it, you can actually dismiss it from your inbox. So as you're going through and following up on your activity, you can actually choose to dismiss it from the document, from the inbox. And same thing with your security settings in QuoteWerks Web. They're based on your security settings in QuoteWerks. So you're not going to have to reset a user's security settings or anything like that. We'll just use whatever they had previously set in QuoteWerks. Okay. So I know that was kind of quick, but that was kind of the point because I knew we were going to have a lot of questions. So I was going to go through the questions. So first off, I see a lot of the same question about pricing. So pricing is $10 per user per month or $110 per user per year. It is concurrently licensed, but it's concurrently in the fact that it shares licensing with QuoteWerks Desktop. So basically what that means is if you have 5 corporate users of QuoteWerks, you can add up to 5 QuoteWerks Web licenses because it's an add-on. So it's an add-on to the corporate edition, essentially. That's the easiest way to think about it. You don't have to match the number of users you have. So if you have 5 corporate licenses and you say, well, you know what, I really only need 3 people to access QuoteWerks Web at a time, then you could just add 3 QuoteWerks Web licenses. It doesn't have to match it. It doesn't have to be the same. It just can't exceed. So you can't add like 10 QuoteWerks Web users when you only have 5 corporate licenses. They either have to match or QuoteWerks Web has to be less than the number of licenses. So like I said, the easiest way to think about that is it's just a add-on to the corporate license. It's something that's available to you, gives you access to use QuoteWerks Web through a browser instead of having to log into QuoteWerks Desktop. I see a lot of questions about hosting options. So yeah, hosting, Amazon's fine, Azure's fine. Those are the most common for like third-party hosting. We have a lot of users that just use their own SQL server. So it does have to be Microsoft SQL, just to be clear. MySQL won't work. It has to be Microsoft SQL. SQL Express will work. That's fine. But just make sure it's Microsoft SQL, and you can host it yourself on your own SQL server. That's fine. We have instructions on how to set it up. It's pretty straightforward for those of you. For those of you that are not interested in hosting it yourself or using a third party, you can use our hosting service. It's $40 a month, and that's a monthly subscription, and that's for each company. So if you have 10 users, it's $40 a month. If you have 1 user, QuoteWerks Web, it's $40 a month. It's just that's the flat price for the hosting service. So that's available for you as well. So if you're not interested in signing up with Amazon or Azure or anything like that, then you can use our service. We do offer that. Okay, I think those are the most common ones I see here, and we have some specific ones in here. So I'll kind of go through the specific questions that we have. So first one, do we have, does the login tie directly in with Active Directory? It does not. So because we're using QuoteWerks Desktop, we're using your QuoteWerks Desktop username and password. As far as security for that, we did add multi-factor authentication for QuoteWerks Web. So when you log in with QuoteWerks Web, you can actually set it up where the user will get a text on their mobile, basically authorizing them to use the login. So that can be set up for them if you're looking to add that additional level of security. Good question. Asked about the pricing per person per year. Is that on top of the current licensing for QuoteWerks Corporate Edition? It is, yeah. So it's basically QuoteWerks Web is an add-on to the corporate. So it would just be an additional to what other add-ons you have in QuoteWerks, or if you're on the subscription licensing on in addition to the corporate licensing itself. Dan, your question about the on-prem SQL, I'll answer that offline for you. Good question. Can we use Pay Special? So QuoteWerks Web does actually have access to Pay Special. It's a little different in that it's template driven. And what I mean is that you already have to have your template created in QuoteWerks Desktop in order to use this. So if you are using Pay Special on a regular basis, you probably already have your template set up, so it shouldn't be a problem. So it'll let you use it if you have the template settings already saved. If not, you'll need to create them first, and then you can use it in QuoteWerks Web. So the Pay Special is in there, but just only on the template side of things right now. Good question. The Dell importer is not available just yet in QuoteWerks Web. That is actually on their radar for something that be added quickly. We're like literally right now actually working on adding additional functionality, but in QuoteWerks Web you can actually see a list of everything that we've added, and a lot of this is from, you can see January and December. This isn't even the updated list. They've added about probably like 30 new features and changes to the to QuoteWerks Web since this date. So this hasn't even been updated. So it'll be a constantly updating process. And the really nice thing is we're just pushing those updates to make everything a lot smoother. But as those things come up, we'll be posting them. But yeah, that is on the list to be added. So this is a great question. If I send a peer review from the desktop version to my manager, who's going to be using web version, will he be able to open it in the web version and make changes? Yeah, absolutely. So basically, they work in sync. The only thing you guys are going to have to keep in mind is if you open it in QuoteWerks Web, you can't open it in QuoteWerks Desktop because someone's already in the document. So just keep that in mind. So just like in QuoteWerks Desktop, if you open if Joe opens the document, Steve can't go and open it also at the same time. We can only have one person in the document at a time. So if you do request like a peer review or management approval or something like that, just make sure you close out of the document so that they can get into it. But that's the same way it works in QuoteWerks Desktop. But yeah, if you submit something for peer review or approval, they can go into QuoteWerks Web and approve and review it and make changes in there in that way as well. So the question about the default setting for creating and updating the AutoTask quote, once you check that checkbox, it'll remember your setting moving forward. So basically, once you do it once you save the quote and create and update it, it'll actually remember that setting moving forward for the rest of your documents. So the licensing, is the licensing per concurrent person like QuoteWerks or truly pricing? So it's concurrent in the fact that the licensing is available for anyone to use for QuoteWerks Web, but it can't exceed the number of QuoteWerks Desktop licenses you have. So like I said, if you have 5 corporate licenses, and you add 3 QuoteWerks Web users, you can have 3 people access QuoteWerks Web at a time. Now, it can be any 3 users. It doesn't have to be a specific user. It can be any 3, but it'll be limited to those 3 users. And then once they log out, someone else could actually log in and have access to QuoteWerks Web. So this is a good question. So do you have to have the same number of web licenses as full licenses? Yeah, we talked about that. No, you don't have to. You just can't exceed it. And then what kind of web error would you get if the license is maxed out? You just get you would just get a notification that they're all being used. They're all essentially in use, and that if someone logs out, you'll be able to get in there. So you'll actually get a notification for that. The purchasing module is not in QuoteWerks Web yet. That is being requested heavily. That is on the to-do list for development. That's a pretty big undertaking, so that one's going to take a little while, but that is definitely on their radar. Steve, yeah, if you're interested in a trial, just let me know, and we can get something set up for you. Yeah, Julie, if you're having issues where you said it keeps logging you out, contact support and have them look into that for you, because there is a timeout, but I believe it's like an hour. So just check with them and see what's going on. So basically, if you're like inactive for an hour, not doing anything, it'll log you out. But if you're actively using the software, it shouldn't be logging you out. So this is a good question and good kind of clarity on the licensing. So question was, if we have 10 licenses and we purchase the 10 add-on for QuoteWerks Web, does that mean we get 20 users in QuoteWerks, or does it mean we just get 10? So it means you get 10 because it's just an add-on to the corporate licensing. That tells you how many users you can have in QuoteWerks total, whether it's web, whether it's desktop. We don't really care, but it's how many licenses you own of the software total. Robert, if we manage, if you're paying us for the hosting, we essentially manage the database. And we would be the ones who have access to it. If there's something specific you need to like query from it, I'm sure there's something we could figure out with that. We haven't really come across it, but support would know more than I would on that. If you're interested in kind of how that works, just contact them. But yeah, we would essentially be managing the database if you're going with our hosting option. So Steve's asking basically if you're updating. But we have to be careful about what we update on the back end, just specifically like with ConnectWise. Yeah, you're right. QuoteWerks Web does update itself, but a lot of the updates are driven from QuoteWerks Desktop still. So you shouldn't have any issues. And we're on ConnectWise's notification. So when they release an update, if there's any changes that we need to make, we're pretty quick to make those and push them out so everything continues to work fine. So shouldn't have any issues there. Just the normal kind of stuff that we have now. So if we're hosting it, Sarah, I'm not sure exactly what you mean with support, or maybe tech support. But yeah, I mean, if you're having issues, you can call into support and they'll troubleshoot it for you. Yeah, if we're hosting it. If you're hosting it and it's not like a SQL issue, it's it's a QuoteWerks issue or a QuoteWerks Web issue, then yeah, support will help you troubleshoot it. Whether we're hosting it or you're hosting it doesn't really matter. It just kind of depends on where the issue is coming from. But yeah, I mean, if we're hosting it, we'll definitely help you with any troubleshooting issues. That's part of the support. Okay. Yeah, and then the which CRM? So yeah, the CRMs that we support with full integrations right now, that's going to be if you're using Autotask, if you're using ConnectWise, Salesforce, Zoho, and MS CRM Dynamics. We have full integration, so the integration works exactly the same. You can select contacts, create and update opportunities, schedule follow-ups for those that are supported in. If it has the ability to write the line items in, which I think all those except for Zoho does, so it'll write the line items in. So the integrations with the distributor or with the CRMs and PSAs, it's going to work exactly the way it works in desktop. So we're very careful to make sure we implemented all that functionality. So you'll still be able to search for your contacts, create and update those opportunities, make sure the line item information gets sent over, all that. And there is no setup for it because it's going to use the settings you already have in QuoteWerks Desktop for those. So that'll just be seamless for you guys, that you'll just be able to essentially start logging in QuoteWerks Web. Once you've done the sync, you'll have all the settings in there that you need, and you can start using it immediately. So it's a pretty clean setup for that. QuoteWerks Web is not available for ACT yet. I'm not sure when that will be added. That's unfortunately a little farther down on their list as of the moment, but definitely something that if you're interested in getting added, definitely keep mentioning to support. Go to the forums and request it on the forums, because we have had a lot of push for that. So the more we hear about it, the more likely it is to get added to QuoteWerks Web. Oh, great question. Will the same shortcuts work that work in QuoteWerks Desktop? Yeah, most of those will work. So like your Control G for converting to a group, that'll work. You'll see a lot of the shortcuts are in there. So the major shortcuts are already in there, and then some of the other shortcuts are in there as well, so that'll continue to work for you. Even if it doesn't say it next to it, it might just be a real estate issue. So you can continue to use those, and most of those will be in there for you to use. I know the Control G works. All the other ones work too, as far as I'm aware, the ones that I've tested, which I think are all the ones that are in that list right there. All right, well, I think we got through everyone's questions. Like I said, if you do have additional questions, let us know. There's a ton of videos on the website. If you go to the QuoteWerks webpage and go to the QuoteWerks Web add-on site, we have videos for each of the CRM integrations. So if you want to see specifically how QuoteWerks integrates with your CRM or your PSA that you're using, you can see that. But like I said, the nice thing is you're not having to learn a brand new system. You're basically going to use a very similar process of what you're using now. So it should be pretty plug and play for many of you, that you can just start using the software kind of as needed. So. But if you do have any other questions, definitely feel free to give us a call or send us an email. We will be happy to help. So thank you everyone for your time, and have a great rest of your day.